All right, everybody, welcome back to the regional championship here in Denver, Colorado. My name is Corey Baumeister, and today I am joined by an extremely special guest. It's none other than Brian Braunduin. BBD, how are you doing? And what are you excited for here today at the RC?
Dude, I'm doing awesome. I'm really excited to jump into some more modern coverage of this tournament. Like one of the things that I'm excited about is like Rhinos was such a huge like makeup of the metagame here. So I'm curious, like, is that gonna like reflect itself in the winner's circle as well, or did people bring some like anti-Rhino spice?
Yeah, it's always interesting to see if the best deck actually holds true when everybody is gunning for it. So, all right, we're going to be getting into round number 4 here. So let's take a look at our first deck list and just get this going right away. We have one heck of a Magic player here. We got Jake Beardsley, which is our reigning Pro Tour Lord of the Rings champion here, playing exactly the same deck. BBD, tell us a little bit about Rakdos Scam here.
I mean, maybe Jake Beardsley should tell us about Rakdos Scam, but
yeah,
I
no
think, yeah, this is just a like black-red mid-rangey strategy where the core element is using Not Dead After All in combination with Grief to like double strip your opponent's hand on the first turn of the game, and also having a 4/3 menace body as well. But beyond that, it just plays like a general mid-rangey strategy with a lot of hand disruption, removal, interaction, and so forth.
Cool. And most famously, a card that we just lost was Fury here that got banned, which is, one of the main cards in this Rakdos Evoke strategy. So, it lost a lot, and it especially lost a lot in this matchup we're going to see. So let's take a look at our other deck list here. And our other 3-0 player here, Evan Heritage, playing Golgari Yawgmoth. I guess technically Jund Yawgmoth for one sideboard card. But tell us a little bit about Yawgmoth and anything special with this list, BBD.
Yeah, so Yawgmoth is like a traditional creature combo deck where you can play a fair game of Magic with your creatures, but ultimately you're trying to combo Yawgmoth alongside sacrificing them to creatures like Young Wolf and using Blood Artist to drain out your opponent. One cool thing about this list that I really like is the addition of Magus of the Moon. Even though it's just one copy, you're like, okay, how am I going to draw one copy? But with 4 Court of Calling, it's something that you can search out. And it's just such an impactful sideboard card in so many matchups that I think is worth having.
Oh, yeah, you slam that bad boy up against Amulet Titan or something like that. You're going to be feeling really good about that one of sideboard slots. So looking at this matchup, Golgari Yawgmoth up against Rakdos Evoke, one of our top 2 out of our top 4 deck lists. Rakdos Evoke was our 4th most played, and Yawgmoth was our 2nd most played. Well, who do you like in this matchup, BBD?
I think it's kind of a close matchup where a lot of haymakers from either side can swing it. One thing I really think is interesting about both of these deck lists is that Jake has Agatha's Soul Cauldrons in his sideboard as well. Yeah. So are we going to see like a Soul Cauldron showdown? It's something I'm interested to see. I don't know if this is the matchup for Soul Cauldron, but
would you bring it in?
When?
Yeah, would you bring it in? I mean, if you can snag your opponent's Yawgmoth and put it on even, a Bone Crusher Giant, I don't know if that's good or not, but it's definitely cool.
Yeah, it's definitely cool, and I think that's more important than being good.
Yeah, that makes sense coming from our 2016 world champion here. So sounds like our match is ready. So these players that are 3-0 are ready to battle here at the U.S. Regional Championship here in Denver. There we get a look at our players, and in the background, our gigantic regional championship, the most attended invite-only event in history, which feels pretty special, I must say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the scenes of a traditional Magic tournament in the background is amazing to see.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You just get those vibes that you want to be there. I think we should actually put the table mic out just so we can hear the ambiance of the tournament hall. That's something you can't replicate.
Yeah, maybe even get like some sort of like dance competition out in the adjacent hall as well.
Man, what were they doing in tournaments when you were still playing back in the day? They must have looked a lot different, huh, BBD?
Yeah, it was a different era.
All right, getting into the game here. We got Evan on the play, starting it off with a Delighted Halfling. Jake answers with a turn 1 fatal push to deal with it. And then look at that gorgeous wall of roots here for Evan for turn number 2. All
Ooh,
right,
the
and
double Yogg.
the double Yawgfather here. So we got the Thoughtseize. It takes a look at 2 Yawgmoths and Cord. Is that no matter what would you would take there, BBD? Is it kind of always take the non-redundant card in that situation?
I think most of the time, I mean, there's going to be exceptions, but I think most of the time that's what you want to do. Like, I could see a world where you play it differently if you have like one removal spell for Yawgmoth, and then
Yeah.
you can get rid of both of them. But
Yeah, as it stands, here it is. Grist coming down off the top, and you see a little head shrug there from Jake as, Grist just ends up being one of the more powerful cards up against Rakdos Evoke without Fury. I mean, Grist was not that big of a deal when you could just go Fury, not dead after all, and just clean up absolutely everything from this Golgari deck, especially Grist. But since that card's out of the metagame, you see these Yawgmoth decks just loading up on Grist.
yeah, and all of a sudden these tokens are relevant board threats for blocking, sacrificing to Yawgmoth, etc.
Yeah, they can just be a pest as well, from time to time having to deal with them.
I don't know what that means. I'm just kidding.
Thank you. Not even acknowledging my joke, just leaving me hanging.
I had to think about whether I wanted to respect a pun or not,
Okay, thank you. Thank you for at least considering it. I appreciate that. All right, so getting back to the game here, we have no third land here from Jake. And then just Yawgmoth, the ability to cast it, plus an unactive Grist here to be able to start getting this going. This looks really bad for Jake so far in this game.
Yeah, this is good. This is gonna be an uphill battle. Yawgmoth provides so much value that it's going to take a lot to both answer this Yawgmoth and answer the next Yawgmoth, and also present a pretty relevant board in the same.
Yeah, totally agree. And we see that this kind of strange interaction that's definitely not super intuitive is when you do kill an Orcish Bowmaster with Yawgmoth, you draw that card, and the Bowmaster does still trigger to lower Grist from 5 to 4. So I don't know how super relevant it is here to start.
Yeah, I mean, it at least provides a second like toughness to that creature, making it harder for Yawgmoth to take out. So it's certainly not irrelevant. I don't know that it will make a difference in the game, but
yeah, for sure. So looking at Jake's hand here, I do see a Grief and maybe another black card there. We'll see if there's a not dead after all type effect. Then we really got something going. But being able to Molten Collapse this Yawgmoth and then just Grief away the second one, even if you're 2-for-1ing yourself, you're saving yourself a load of cards here that it definitely seems worth it, wouldn't you think?
yeah, you've eliminated the major threat that's going on, which is the Yawgmoth. You still have to
Yeah.
deal with the fact that you're behind on board, but it's not, undoable at this point.
Yeah, totally agree. And yeah, back in the day, I would say a couple months ago here when we had Fury, cleaning up the board was rather trivial at some point. But as it stands now, just Rakdos Evoke just doesn't play from behind as well as it used to in this kind of matchup. And I think that is just a major contributor where we see Rakdos Evoke going from the most played deck to the 4th most played deck behind Amulet, Yogg, and Rhinos.
Yeah, like the deck didn't die off like maybe it was expected to happen, but it did certainly like lose a step for sure.
Yep, agree. So kind of looking at Jake's hand there, it looks like we have Bone Crusher, Orcish Bowmaster, and a Fable. And yeah, that's great when your opponent doesn't have all of that going on right now.
Oh, Pendelhaven. That's a nice one right there.
That is a spicy one.
Yeah.
Increase the clock a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one thing here is that the Grist ultimate is probably getting close to, if not already there, of dealing a good bit of damage. So I think that might be something to consider, because the clock here is not irrelevant.
Definitely. Yeah, giving away your Grist is rough. And, we'll see. Because you either ultimate Grist, if it makes sense, or I would think you just negative, get rid of a creature, and deal with Dauthi, because Dauthi is one of those ways that Jake could get back in, finds a way to Molten Collapse Grist or something, play it, and get that stuff going. We did just see Not Dead After All drawn as well. so you could have done some Dothy tricks with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is step one to clawing your way back in the game. Is this Bowmaster here?
Yep, Bowmaster looking across the battlefield at a couple Bowmasters and a couple 1/1s. It just gets so much worse when there's a Pendelhaven. It's like these blocks are just all nightmarish.
Yeah, I mean, the Pendelhaven is like just a really strong card in a lot of these grindier matchups. Like it influences combat so well. It influences removal.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, you haven't been necessarily playing professional Magic as much here in the last couple of years, but Pendelhaven is a card you have played with, back in the time when you were, Platinum Pro, you were on the grind, going to GPs and all that kind of stuff, right?
Oh yeah, like this is a card that's kind of been a staple for. I mean, even before I was playing Magic.
Fair, fair. Okay, so we see Bone Crusher Giant dealing with Hapatra, the card you absolutely need to deal with. But still, we see just an onslaught of 1/1s coming in here. Gonna put Jake to at least 5 as it stands right now. And then we have Grist ticking up. Really, this game all really hinged on that turn that Evan was able to top deck Grist instead of just jamming Yawgmoth there. I think that was really the turning point here.
Yeah, I mean, it was a classic situation where you can't Thoughtseize the top of the deck. So,
Yes.
yeah.
100%. But that being said, Jake Beardsley still has, a ton of cards in hand, hasn't made a land drop here, in a couple hours, it seems. So has nothing but gas in the tank if there's time to deploy it. But a fetch land putting Jake to 4 will not be enough and give game 1 to Evan. So coming back to the booth here, BBD, as far as Jake's sideboard here in the Yawgmoth matchup, maybe those spicy Agatha's Cauldron that we were talking about before this match. Is there anything else you really like to bring in?
Yeah, the Cursed Totems as well. And on the other side, so if you're bringing in Cursed Totem and possibly even Soul Cauldron, which I'm not sure if those are coming in or not, suddenly Evan has to think about, like, do I want to bring in Force of Vigor or some of those types of cards as well to answer now a number of these types of effects, including Fable of the Mirror Breaker as well. So.
Yeah, that would just be great. If you bring in Cursed Totem and Agatha's Soul Cauldron and you shut down your own activated abilities here, that's just good deck building, right?
Oh yeah, the creating your own non-bows, I mean, that's like step number 1 for building a deck.
Yeah, that is step number 1 for being a professional Magic player for sure. So looking at the Yawgmoth, you were saying like only Force of Vigor. Anything else you bring in for the Rakdos Evoke matchup?
Yeah, let me take a quick gander at what he's got in his board here. It's kind of a difficult situation because you don't want to ever really overboard for these kinds of matchups because you have to respect the fact that at the end of the day, you're still getting your hand stripped away. If you take away too many of your core elements of your deck, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where maybe your engine doesn't run as smoothly.
Yeah, and I would think Yawgmoth is one of those decks that, you have to keep the core of the deck, in place a lot more than these Rakdos Evoke decks. You always have some of these flex slots from Rakdos where you can really interchange different kinds of pieces of disruption. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's more like a Jund deck, It's what pieces do you need for what matchups you're in, and you have this kind of generalized deck in game 1, and then post board you get to morph into a deck that is linearly targeting whatever your opponent is doing.
I mean, it can't truly be a Jund deck. It's not 45% against the field. Some matchups, Rakdos Evoke is actually favored, though, BBD.
I mean, maybe without Fury, it is 45% against the field. Maybe it's gone back,
Fury put it into Jund level instead of being that S tier deck that we were seeing for so long. So players are getting ready to go, so we can go down to that match whenever we are ready here. All right, so here we go. Game number 2. Jake Beardsley gonna be on the play up against Evan. Doesn't look like we have any mulligans, or maybe one mulligan there from Jake. And that brings up a question as we about to see this grief interaction here is, do you really ever mulligan against this Rakdos Evoke deck, BBD, or do you try to keep like any kind of remotely passable hand?
I think it depends on, what strategy you're playing. I think with a deck like Yawgmoth, you want to just kind of keep any generically playable hand because you are going to get your cards stripped away. You're going to get some removal spells, like hitting your core creatures, and so on and so forth. But also at the end of the day, Yawgmoth recoups cards so well that sometimes it's worth, throwing away a bad hand and coming back for, maybe something that gives you a little bit more play.
Yeah, and speaking of pretty much any generic hand, that fits the criteria right there. Like, that is nothing special as far as a hand. You definitely still need to top deck some lands. And I think if that Fatal Push wasn't there, we might have saw something interesting, like just deal with both of the Delighted Halflings. But being able to just crack a fetch land and, Fatal Push the Grief right away just is not worth it.
Yeah, it definitely forced that play a little bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm a fan of the greedy line of hope they don't draw a second land.
Now, are you a fan of those retro border dual lands, BBD?
Yes, I am. I'm also a fan of those.
Yeah, same with those
Beautiful.
that misty rainforest in the yard as well. Evan, you can tell, absolutely loves playing Yawgmoth with how awesome of a deck he has. Here we go. We got Dothy Voidwalker as a turn 2 play. And I mean, this is the dream. This is what makes this Rakdos Evoke deck so powerful is, number one, if you can get the Grief Not Dead After All combo going for turn number 1, excellent. You're probably very far ahead. But if you can follow it up with an Orcish Bowmaster or a Dothy, and God forbid, go land 3 and Fable afterwards, you feel extremely good about your position. And it's probably how Jake Beardsley won the Pro Tour, by doing that a couple of times.
Oh, for sure. And Jake sends in creatures here, but I feel like he kind of had to know that something was up when Evan decided to use Wall of Roots for mana instead of just his land.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, there's just no point to do that, right?
So attacking with the grief, yeah, there's no point to do that otherwise. So attacking with the grief there was certainly a show of Bowmaster's coming, but I have my own response in a Bowmaster to swing it back in my favor.
Yeah, you can tell Jake really kind of knew, if you have this, I do this, type play. And now it's going to be that big turn of the game here where Evan has the ability to drop Yawgmoth. And if Yawgmoth hits the field, like, what do you even do? Like, there's so many threats. This still feels pretty brutal for Evan, wouldn't you think?
It is still a rough situation. This is going to make it a lot better. I think one thing that you can consider playing for here is maybe like distributing a couple of counters like onto the Voidwalker, onto the Grief, and then using, maybe if you draw a land off of a Yawgmoth or something like that, be able to proliferate and finish things off.
Yeah, proliferate, not really what we see a ton of from Yawgmoth. You're definitely just going for, oh God, Orcish Bowmaster here was an excellent draw. Now you got to think Evan is looking a lot better. But yeah, we don't see a ton of proliferate from the Yawg. It's really the other ability that we see a ton of.
Yeah, you don't see it that much, but it's always looming,
Yeah. And extremely good against like Rhinos, our most played deck. If you can just put a counter on each of the Rhinos and then proliferate, all of a sudden they have 2 Grizzly Bears. It's much more manageable.
Yeah, so one interesting thing here is Jake has Bowmasters under the Dothy as well. So he does have the option of using that if he so chooses.
Yeah, does that mean you don't attack with Dothy, or
I think I would still consider it just to push in some damage, but the problem with that is how easily Yawgmoth can kill it, especially now with the Bowmaster providing additional creatures in play. So I do like holding back here.
Yeah, I like holding back as well. And we see Fable and Not Dead After All in hand for Jake. So normally this would be excellent, right? You Not Dead After All Dothy, and then you just get Bowmaster, you get Dothy back. But, if that were to happen, all Evan has to do is just sack 2 creatures to kill Dothy in response, and it's just a complete blowout.
Yeah. Yeah,
No,
Yawgmoth,
really rough spot.
Yeah, Yawgmoth really holds all the cards with the ability to do so much at kind of instant speed effectively.
Yeah, really rough spot here from Jake. And, exactly what you were saying, game number 1, it started off so great with Grief Not Dead After All, but you just can't Thoughtseize the top of the deck.
Yeah, and the top of the deck seems to be heavy, heavy with Bowmasters for both players in these 2 games.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Evan drew quite well after the double grief. And Jake, was able to deploy Dothy into Bowmaster. But it just doesn't look like it's enough. And I don't even know if, the getting land number 3 to have a Fable would have been that good either.
Yeah, I don't think it would ultimately change a whole lot. I think that grief into Dothy was the game plan, and if that didn't pan out, then tough beats. And honestly, credit to the resilience and strength of Yawgmoth for like how easily this game has shifted from how good of a start Jake had.
Yeah, so quickly. I was literally saying, how does Evan get out of this 2 turns ago? And now we see, I believe one Yawgmoth trigger is on the stack targeting this Dothy. So it's pretty face up information here that Evan can just sack 2 more creatures or 1 more, depending on if this trigger resolves. I would assume Jake probably played this in response to the first trigger, but wow, just lets that go. Are you surprised by that at all?
I'm a little bit surprised by that, to be honest. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Like,
I did like the play of playing the not dead after all as early as you can. You don't want to
mhm.
wait until your Dothy has one counter on it already because then it's so easy to finish it off with the second one.
Yeah, I would like that as well. But even the delighted halflings at this point, you just think if you sacrifice those to target Dothy, yeah, you kind of need them for mana, but you're either going to draw spells or you're going to draw some more mana sources from those delighted halflings. So I'm pretty okay getting rid of those, but I think this is still a great position for Evan.
Yeah, I still like this position as well. Granted, with that being said, life total is getting low.
Ah,
Yawgmoth does have a cost, so the game is certainly not over. Even though Jake doesn't really have a hand and needs to draw a red source to even play the Fable, the board itself is still formidable.
definitely. And that's another reason why I would have really tried to get that Dothy off the battlefield because I mean, right now that is a 4 power unblockable in its truest sense here, as there's no shadow creatures from Evan, and that's a must deal with threat.
Absolutely.
So Evan deciding what to do here looks like just a delighted halfling, and one other mystery card in hand. And here we go. Now we're gonna start to get this Dothy off the battlefield. Is that a
Yeah, begin the
blood artist?
process of clearing away the creatures.
Yeah, if that was a blood artist, you got to think that's pretty strong if you're getting rid of your own creatures, right?
Yeah, and you're also getting rid of Jake's creatures too. So,
Yeah, because
you know,
blood artist does trigger both sides. That's right.
it does. Now, with that being said, the Dothy has to be off the table first before that's coming into play. But
Good point.
yeah,
Yeah, because of course it does not hit the dies trigger if it goes into exile. So something you can definitely wait on. I think the other card was Hapatra as well.
yeah, I mean the combo.
Yeah, absolutely. So big thanks here from Evan. When you're at 3-0 at a tournament like this, BBD, are you starting to feel like, okay, wow, maybe I can really get a deep run in this situation? Or is this still just far too early to getting giddy at a tournament of this size?
I mean, I think it's never a wrong time to get excited about doing well in a tournament. So I'm
Fair.
not going to say that it's too early for that. With that being said, this is still way too early to be thinking like grand aspirations.
Yeah, exactly. You could be 3-7 by the end of the day or something like that when you're starting 3-0. So here we go. Last counter going to Dothy puts Evan down to 3, and then the wicked roll going away will put Evan down to 2 already. So something like, a land and a lightning bolt here, or even just this grief getting in there and then it dying at some point, that wicked roll will go away as well. So Evan kind of had an effective 1 life already. That blood artist is really going to come in handy, but if that blood artist comes down next turn without any fight from Beardsley, are we just all wrapped up here?
Probably. Now, with that being said, the combination of 2 life, the wicked roll, really means that there's actually like now Yawgmoth can't be activated. So I really
Yeah.
like that attack because you put Evan in a spot where, Yawgmoth is just Yawgmoth at this point. So without trading with some creatures. Now, if that Blood Artist comes down, creature combat is still going to be very annoying. Like
Hmm.
you're not going to want to block an attacking creature, for example, anymore. But it does give Jake some time, and he could find a Bowmaster's, a Lightning Bolt, or something else to finish the game.
Yeah, and one thing I'm seeing as well that you could do is play Blood Artist first and then attack with Hapatra. That's that kind of card where you don't see that ability on the card of just when it deals damage to a player, you put a one, -1, -1 counter on something. But that seems excellent, right? If you just attack with Hapatra and they don't block, you could then kill your own Orcish Bowmaster to then gain a life, and then Yogg is at least online again.
Yeah,
A little
I mean
spicy.
it is it's a really interesting choice because on one hand, if you lose the Hapatra, you do also lose your engine that lets
Yeah.
you, go quote unquote infinite here. But on the other hand, it does give you the one life total to begin.
Yeah, maybe it's a little too greedy, but I love me a greedy attack here and there. That's for sure. So Jake did decide to go to chapter 2 of Fable and keep the card. We didn't see exactly what was drawn, but got to be something good here. What do you keep that you don't immediately fire off?
Yeah, I think you're probably really only wanting to keep specifically something that probably ends the game, like Bowmaster's Lightning Bolt, or possibly I could see wanting to keep a removal spell for Yawgmoth as well. But with
Like a
that being said,
terminate, maybe?
yeah, like a Terminate, a Molten Collapse, something like that. But with that being said, Evan is representing a possibility for Court of Calling. So
Hmm.
even if you did draw um something to finish the game, you do have to respect that that could happen.
That's a good point. Yeah, I was gonna say, is there any reason to not just jam then, if that's the case? But yeah, waiting for Court of Calling makes a lot of sense. It's not there from Evan, but Evan does have Agatha's Soul Cauldron as well as Grist. So something like Grist to sack your own creature and then target your opponent's creature to get a couple of triggers off Blood Artist would be decent. But yeah, looking at Jake's list, Jake does have a ton of ways to deal with your opponent at one life. There's two Bone Crushers, two Lightning Bolts, a Shieldred if that goes unanswered, as well as four Bowmasters, and in the sideboard, Culligan's Command, as well. So a ton of ways for Jake to get out of this match.
Yeah, although time is starting to run out here.
Okay, so if it's there, it would be cast right now. Full information. So with Jake kind of shrugging it off there, I would think that it's not.
Yeah, I would think so as well.
And a pretty fun story here with Jake Beardsley when Jake won Pro Tour in Barcelona. I played Jake. He is a local in Roanoke, Virginia here. I played Jake at a local SCG event in the 01 bracket, which he then went on to win after he beat me, of course, and then went on to go all the way to the RC, queue for that, and queue for the Pro Tour and win it. Quite impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive. That's an awesome story.
It was awesome. And what a nice guy for sure. So, all right, here is the terminate to go after Blood Artist right away. I didn't get a glimpse at the other card.
I like the decision to go after the Blood Artist. If you go after the Yawgmoth, Soul Cauldron's just going to put Yawgmoth back into play effectively. But Blood Artist, getting rid of that, ends the threat of the combo kill.
Yeah, and there's like really no way to get it back besides the one of Takanuma, which is already in play, right? So if cards go to the graveyard and they don't have activated abilities from Yogg, they're just out.
Yeah, they're out minus maybe endurance and then Court of Calling or something. But I mean, if we're getting to that point in the game, I think different. The game would probably be over through natural causes anyway.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, it looks like Terminate was the card that was kept off Fable the Mirror Breaker, and a good choice, essentially, because the card below it was Blood Crypt. So I don't know, even if Jake were to have got rid of that to try to find Lightning Bolt or Bone Crusher Giant, I don't think it would have came on time anyways, as it really looks like Evan is just able to run away with this game from this position.
Yeah, I mean, the game is definitely not over,
Okay.
but It's yeah, I think there's still maybe another turn for Jake, but it is looking rough.
Yeah, because we don't. If we have an undying creature here with the interaction with Apatra Yogg and undying creature, that would essentially be it, right? Or just I guess without the Blood Artist, yeah, of course we don't have the infinite here.
Yeah, without the Blood Artist, there's only 2 activations. Now,
Yeah.
I was harping on this before. This is where that proliferate ability is starting to look appealing.
Oh baby, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you can get another counter off the Egg of the Soul Cauldron on, let's say, your death touching snake, something like that, and then proliferate, kill the reflection, as well as boost your own creatures and even boost grist. You get that as well.
Yeah, you can even proliferate the grist, minus it, and then cauldron the grist as well.
Oh, now
And
you're
actually,
speaking
that
my
might be the play
language.
that Evan is looking to make here.
Now the real question is, do we have enough dice for that to represent all these different modes that are going to happen with grist? As it gets quite confusing when you get grist to the yard and you get this interaction with the Egg of the Soul Cauldron, because it is a creature when it's still in the graveyard, that now all your creatures are also planeswalkers that have tokens on this. So not only do you need this +1/+1 counter, but they now have loyalty abilities. So they start at 0 loyalty, but then you can tick them up and start making insects out of them as well.
Yeah, and then if you want to really go crazy, you got to get Wall of Roots going as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, and here we go. We are officially doing it. That's the other dice there is loyalty from Grist. And yeah, now with Evan at 3, I guess we tap the top of the deck and say, is it Lightning Bolt?
Yeah, it's bolt or bust at this point, basically.
All right, here we go. Big draw step for Jake. Is it? Oh, the sweat. I love it. That does not look like a lightning bolt. And Evan Heritage going to 4-0 here with not only the most beautiful Yawgmoth deck I have ever seen, but Evan really masterfully played that deck, BBD.
Oh yeah, I was really happy with the way that Evan chose to play those games, especially that last one with the proliferate and all the different lines. Like, there's so many different lines with Yawgmoth, and it's very difficult to find the right lines like that is an impressive feat.
Yeah, and just all the different modes, all the different dices the different dices you have to bring to your match with the loyalty abilities on Grist, all this stuff. It can be a lot to keep up with, that's for sure. So that's going to do it here for our main feature match. We're going to take ourselves a short break, but have no fear. We're going to have some backup matches here from round number 4, right on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere.
This is the RFG deck box. The top has a translucent shell with a polished showcase window. This allows you to display your favorite card, like your commander, and makes it easy to always find the right deck. And the top and bottom shells magnetically connect, so it stays nice and neat during gameplay. This is the RNG dice box. It magnetically attaches to your deck boxes so that you can easily move it from deck to deck. Unlike competitor deck boxes that either have a dice compartment or not, this way you can manage a single dice kit and move it from each deck so you never forget your dice. To access your dice, simply slide open the tray and magnetically snap it to the shell. And when you're done, slide it back in and the magnets lock it all in place.
All right, everybody, welcome back here to the regional championship here in Denver, Colorado. My name is Corey Ballmeister. That's Brian Braun-Duin, and we're going to be bringing you coverage here of round number 4 here for our backup feature match. And BBD, we got a spicy one. What if I told you we were about to see Is It Merfolk? Would you believe me?
I would believe you, Corey, because I have seen the deck list, but yeah.
Okay.
Alas.
I should have asked you that question before this match, before we knew we were going to see it, huh?
Yeah, you waited way too long on that.
All right, that's a punt. Okay, so let's get this deck list up on the screen here as we got Nathan playing Is It Merfolk here. And tell us a little bit about this deck. This is definitely one of the decks in the other category here from this U.S. Regional Championship.
For sure. And honestly, this is one of the kind of oldest decks in Magic. So it's really cool that Merfolk is still viable in the year 2024. And what Merfolk is doing is it is a tribal creature strategy designed around playing Merfolk of all creatures and kind of growing them as you go with all the different lords. One thing I really like about this Is It Merfolk deck is the interaction that it has. It has Flame of Anor, which is awesome with a lot of these Merfolk are actually wizards, so it works really well.
Yeah, there is a ton of wizards, and this deck definitely got a boost here with Tishana's Tidebinder being definitely the newest addition and just an incredible card. And going to be probably the most important card in this matchup as we take a look at Nathaniel's opponent here. And we got one of our most popular decks here in the field, Damian Dayton playing Amulet Titan. Tell us about this one, BBD.
Yeah, Amulet is also a deck that's been around in Modern for so long and has kind of always kind of toed with being one of the top decks, but often is held back by the fact of how difficult it is to play and how a lot of people don't like to play this kind of deck. And I think it's still a tier 1 deck, and it's based around the card Amulet of Vigor, which allows tapped permanents to untap, along with the Ravnica bounce lands that produce 2 mana but come into play tapped, that lets you very quickly ramp out for a Primeval Titan that has a number of combo kills to win the game, often on the turn you play it.
Yeah, still remain tier 1, even though we've had a lot of good decks because it's so big-brained. I'd have to agree with you. So let's see how this matchup unfolds here. Do you think either of these decks is heavily advantaged in here? This is a tough matchup to, kind of, put your thumb on and figure out who is actually favored.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, one of the things about Amulet Titan is that it's usually very good in these kinds of matchups where your opponent is playing a deck that's linear and a little bit slower than you. But with that being said, the Merfolk deck has a lot of ways to, interact with lands, interact with, Primeval Titan or Amulet of Vigor with the, Tishanas. So there's a lot of interesting elements here.
Totally agree. Okay, so turn number 1, we got this going here. Amulet on the play, gets a Grazer in, and then goes for a turn 2 Dryad already with a bounce land to return Radiant Fountain to get some extra life here. That is a nice little start there, BBD.
Yeah, that's a great start. No, degenerate Amulet hand, but just a nice solid ramp hand. And that can be quite good with just one follow-up like a Primeval Titan.
Yeah, and I believe I did see Primeval Titan in the hand here from Damien, but no, essentially 6th land here, 5th land, since one of them is a bounce land. So brutal to just go land pass, even if your land is gaining you some life there. And wow, I stand corrected. I think that might be 3 Primeval Titans, as one of them was a Summoner's Pact, as well as 2 other Primeval Titans. Might have been a Dismember as well, but that's a lot of prime times.
Yeah, it's almost Titan time.
That being said, though, Nathaniel has 3 mana available and Tishana's Tidebinder in hand there. So that really turns Primeval Titan from an already just incredible magic card to just a vanilla 6/6. But 6 mana 6/6s are just iconic already. I'm looking at you, Colossal Dreadmaw.
Oh yeah, look, there's no shame in a 6/6 for 6. That's just good magic. That's clean magic right there.
Absolutely. Instead, gets the wrong beast in play here as Damien drew the absolute worst possible draw, the late game Arboreal Grazer for no value.
Yeah, did pick up a land though.
Yeah, picked up a land that does allow Damien to cast Primeval Titan here, but there it is. Tishana's Tidebinder counters the Titan and now no longer has that special text. So even if it attacks next turn, it's sad. It's not even as good as Colossal Dreadmaw right now. It doesn't have trample.
It does not, but there are more Titans.
There are more Titans. So here we go. We got Flame of Anor to deal with Dryad and get a couple of extra cards here. And then what? We got Lord of Atlantis. We got a lot of gas here in hand. A couple of lands, one of them being Otawara. So a lot of stuff to do here for Nathaniel.
Yeah, one thing to note though is that 6/6 is not irrelevant. It is still looming large in combat here. I mean, great choice to get rid of the Dryad. That combined with future Primeval Titans could just be like game over very quickly with Valakut. So I like the decision to get that off the board. But if Damien does have a Summoner's Pact in hand, that is a play that can happen in 1 or 2 turns still.
Yeah, turn those fish into fish sticks here with Valakut and start blasting away at those creatures until you can just point it upstairs to deal with it. But with Nathaniel only having 2 mana open here, this is where I would definitely be wanting to get another Primeval Titan down. Ideally, of course, with an amulet, as just casting a 6 mana 6/6 that gets you some lands just doesn't really look good enough on this immediate turn, but still a strong play.
It sets you up for the future. Like it
Yeah.
won't. It's not going to immediately turn the game, but it is going to put you in a position where now you're in a spot, and you can maybe grab even like Simic Growth Chamber and a Teleria West, or actually there's a West in play already, like any bounce land here to pick that up.
Is that what you would do right away? I know you are a diehard amulet player, been playing this deck your entire career. Is that correct?
No. That is not correct.
Yeah, you were casting other 1 mana artifacts for most of your career, right? Like Lantern of Insight, those kind of cards that really just do nothing. That's your style, right?
Yeah, I'm more into the draft chaff.
There we go. Okay, so we get Valakut in play as well as Handwear Battlements. Goes for that instead of some of the other choices to give your creatures haste. But this works the same with a Valakut if you are able to untap it with Primeval Titan or with an amulet.
Yeah, this is a kind of a setup play because if Damien does have that 3rd Titan, you don't have an amulet in play, so that Titan won't be able to attack the turn it comes down. But with the battlements now it can.
Yep.
And the Valakut also is a nice setup for Dryad as well.
Yeah, Dryad is definitely something that I feel like Damien's going to need here pretty quick as you look across the table, and it looks like, you got a 3/2, you got a 1/1, you got a 1/1, but with all these Lord abilities plus Lord of Atlantis here, I mean, these merfolks are getting quite large.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting to the point pretty soon where they're going to be, on pace size-wise with a Titan, but that's still going to favor the amulet deck in that scenario. If Nathaniel is unable to attack with his creatures, that's a bad sign.
100%. Here we see the Merfolk God itself here. Just an incredibly powerful Magic card. One of the additions from Modern Horizons 2, correct?
Oh, absolutely. That was a Brad Nelson, love affair with that card.
Yeah, because you were a part of that design team for Modern Horizons 2, so you got to test a lot of these cards beforehand, correct?
Yeah, like that was one of the cards that we tested. Like, I mean, yeah, all the cards for that set. We spent about 3 or 4 weeks coming in to test the set, and it was
Okay.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Sweet. Is it because Brad's such a fish that wanted to design a merfolk? Was that the main push for that?
Yeah, no.
Okay. All right,
Brad is a level below fish. What is worse than fish? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's impossible to know. Got to dagger my brother anytime I can. So here we go. We see Otawara bouncing Primeval Titan in combat here, so it doesn't combo with the Dryad, but that still means second main phase you can just play it and get some Valakut triggers here, right? This looks really good for Damien.
Yeah, this is a really rough situation. Plus, with land drops to make, I mean, I think this is just game over.
I would think so, right? Like, you get another Valakut. I'm not sure what that other land is, but I wouldn't be too shocked if it's a Vesuva to just get another Valakut and then what, you just, 18 your opponent?
Yeah, it looks like a mirror pool.
Okay. So decided to just put Nathaniel down to 2. Is there any world where, Nathaniel is able to just like attack through for lethal here? 24 is kind of a lot though.
24 seems like it's way too much. The only world I could see is, you are playing a bunch of lords, and I don't know, maybe that scales into being enough.
Okay, that is looking at the hand here, that is a Lord of Atlantis, and
Okay, that
the other creature does Tideshaper does turn a land into an island. Okay, no, for a second I thought we were gonna have to do some big brain math, but looks like Nathaniel is gonna fall here. Game one, game number one, going to Damien here on Amulet. Is that a surprise to you at all, BBD, or is would you favor the Amulet side here? It's tough to favor Merfolk considering it's not a deck that was on a lot of our radar, but it could be decent in this matchup.
Yeah, no, I think that was a kind of an expected result from the first game, at least, where Amulet's on the play, has a relatively decent draw. I mean, it did stall out for a bit there, but against a slower linear deck like Merfolk, I think that's kind of what you're expecting from game one. Now, post-board, it might get a little bit more difficult.
So speaking of post-board, looking at the Merfolk deck list, do you like anything immediately in this matchup? Or, yeah, what do you like?
I mean, the thing that speaks out to me is subtlety. That's a huge card.
Yeah.
Being able to put pressure on with your Merfolk and then interrupt the big turn of a Primeval Titan with a subtlety, especially from a point of no mana available too. That's going to be, I think, the way that Merfolk is looking to beat Titan.
Yep, I would totally agree with you. We'll see maybe that other Flame of Anor, if you want to bring that in to be able to pick off a Dryad and maybe get an Amulet. If you get that 2-for-1, it is always extremely spicy. So whenever we're ready, we'll head down to the battlefield here to get y'all ready for round number 2. And if you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining us here at the Dreamhack Regional Championship. We're going to be playing Modern all weekend here. We got a ton of rounds today, and then tomorrow we'll be sending people to the World Championship in Vegas at the end of the year, as well as giving away $30,000 for first, BBD. And speaking of someone who has made it to the World Championship and done quite well at it, how is that kind of tournament to play in? That's one I've never been able to play in, but it's always been a huge dream, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to compare to it. It's the pinnacle of play, and honestly, it's a combination of being really stressful, but also just such a wonderful experience.
Yeah, did it get better when you won it? Would you say that made it a better experience when you got to win the World Championship?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I feel that winning the most important tournament I ever played was something that I really enjoyed.
Okay, good. I just wasn't sure. I wanted to clarify. All right, we see subtlety here on the turn 2 Dryad after an Amulet comes into play. Now, that's not necessarily what you want to be subtletying, though, right?
It's not what you want to do, but Nathaniel's struggling a little bit with his mana base, and so in that spot, putting the opponent back, making them waste a turn is still worth it.
Yep, totally agree. So we got Tishana's Tidebinder here. Now this has got to be, targeting the Amulet here, and that is a spicy little mode. Tell us about this interaction, BBD, for anyone who might not know.
Yeah, so Tishana's Tidebinder can counter, the activated or triggered ability, and if it does happen to be an artifact as one of the types, it permanently shuts the card off. So that Amulet is effectively completely a dead card at this point.
So just blank cardboard, right? It's an artifact, but absolutely no text on it right now?
Yeah, has no text and is unlikely to gain text. I think basically Damien could possibly find a situation where like an Odawara or something picks it back up, but pretty unlikely that Amulet will be relevant in the remainder of this game.
Yeah, if you were to reset it, you can do so, but otherwise you just have to deal with the Tishana's Tidebinder to get that Amulet going once again, and deal with it. Damien is about to do right now, right? That's 6 lands coming into play with a Dryad and Valakut. That just deals with it, unless could there be another one? Oof. So that counters the ability, but it does not shut down Valakut, right? It's only artifacts or creatures? Okay.
Correct.
I was going to say, is Valakut now a blank piece of cardboard?
No, yeah. Okay, and there's the Flame of... Yeah, so now with the Dryad off the board, the Valakut is no longer a threat. The threat of the Tishana's Tidebinder dying to open up the Amulet is gone as well. So for how difficult of an early game Nathaniel had, he really pulled it back together.
Yeah, and now, I mean, outside of a Primeval Titan, You got to think this is definitely Nathaniel's game to win. And even if we do have prime time without Dryad beating on the battlefield, you're not getting those Valakut triggers. And with Amulet being blank cardboard, that's not going to help either. Now, that looks like, I want to say, a Dismember.
Yeah, it does appear
That
to
would
be a
make a lot of
Dismember.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some alternate art Dismember. Looks pretty cool, though.
So that can open back up the Amulet, but right now the Amulet's not really doing anything. There's no action to combo with it.
Yeah, definitely not strong right now. See an attack for 6 on Boreal Grazer, getting in the way to soak up some damage, and then just a grip full of cards there here. We got Aether Vial, we got Merfolk Trickster, we got at least one Lord, as well as these Tide Shapers to turn one of these lands into an island. And yeah, turning a bounce land into an island, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, strips it of a mana.
Yeah.
Down to 5 mana sources in play.
And those are islands. Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty brutal here. You got to think, is it Merfolk is about to even this up and send us to a game number 3?
Yeah, it really speaks to like the volatility of a matchup like this, where one deck is a little bit faster of a combo deck. The other deck is also trying to be fast, but with the interaction. And a lot of times it just comes down to who's on the play, who can get some of these powerful draws to unlock things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, here's a bounce line now that this Amulet is ready to go. Picks up one of the islands. We'll see if there is prime time as well. It feels like it kind of has to be there. And with Damien, not jamming this immediately, you got to think it's not there.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's there, and yeah, this is looks like a lethal clock.
Ooh, once again, the late game of Boreal Grazer, not what you want.
No. It does get to put in that Gruul Turf, which lets you pick up the other island.
Okay.
So it does take away the islands.
Yeah, so no island walks. That is a thing that can definitely matter. It doesn't look like it's in the hand for Nathaniel, but ooh, subtlety off the top just has to lock this game up.
Yeah, I think there might be a lethal attack this turn, but if not, subtlety is kind of guaranteed that it's going to be almost impossible to get out of this board state.
Yeah. So, yeah, you get Tidebinder up plus the Lord. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, 7 exactly. There was no island, so the Tide Shaper was not boosted by that, but didn't matter with the Lord able to clean it up. And getting ready for game number 3, anything different when it comes to Amulet being on the play, or is this kind of just business as usual?
I think it's mostly business as usual. You might want to keep or mulligan different hands depending on whether you're on the play or draw. But I think you have a lot more plays open to you on the play because you don't need to be quite as fast by starting out that way. So I think it gives you a little bit of a broader chance on what hands you want to keep in mulligan.
Gotcha. So as we get ready for this game number 3, we can head down whenever we're ready. But I want to ask you, BBD, if you were going to play in this tournament, what deck would you have played?
I would have definitely played the Rhino strategy. It's kind of my favorite of the major strategies in this format, but I would have actually been tempted to play Amulet because I do think it is a really powerful strategy in this format, and it really rewards format mastery.
Totally agree with you. It is a super strong deck. Now, would you have played the 4-color versions, which seemed to be the talk of the tournament, highlighted by Luis Scott Vargas, just got to be the favorite to win this tournament, is one of the best players of all time. Would you play that kind of leyline version or just the traditional teamer?
Yeah, I would have played that new version. It looks amazing, honestly. And if I knew about that deck coming in, I certainly would have audible to it.
Yeah, you might have tried to get out of this casting job and try to get a special invite, right?
That's right. Yeah. Special guest, a special invite.
There you go. So fireworks happening here. There is 2 amulets, but that is not a bounce land. And this could be one of those draws where you have the amulets, you have the prime time, you have everything kind of locked up. You just can't find a bounce land. We'll see what's in Damien's hand, but
yeah, and there's also the element where, if Damien had a bounce land there and the Primeval Titan, might have been not had quite enough mana on that turn and needed...
Pass the turn, says Damien there, BBD. That one has to hurt here. With no mulligans, of course, you're always going to look back on these situations and be like, wow, maybe I really should have mulliganed. But is this a hand with two amulets? Are you just priced into keeping it almost no matter what your other cards are? Or what do you think?
Yeah, it really depends on what those other cards are. I think if you're on
Yeah.
double amulet and if you do happen to draw a land, your hand just immediately goes off. I think it's reasonable to keep it. If it's double amulet with, no bounce land or green source like this, and your hand's a little sketchy, you probably want to send it back.
Totally agree. And there we go. A supercharged divination getting power crept up by also being a shatter here from Flame of Anor. And okay, all right. The One Ring is definitely decent here. And oh, Force of Vigor to blow that play out as well. And Damien drew the bounce land, but decided to keep it in hand to make sure he's able to keep doing the bounce land strategy thing. But that was a blowout.
Yeah, that was a huge blowout. That one ring was supposed to bridge the gap here.
Oh, brutal. So here we go. Silver Gold Adept getting in there again. And
Yeah, it looks like
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it looks like Damien accidentally saw an extra card when he was, going to draw his card for turn, which is an easy fix.
Yep, absolutely. These kind of dexterity errors are really no problem. Usually ends with being DQ'd, sent out of the tournament, and you gotta just head home, correct?
Yeah, and barred from future entry as well.
Yeah, we don't mess around here at the U.S. Regional Championship. No, it's usually just shuffle your deck, maybe. Sometimes a game rules violation. A very minor thing, of course. So looking at Nathaniel's hand, the first thing that I see though is two Aether Vials, two lands, and one other mystery card. So we are pretty much on it is a subtlety. Okay, so that is the best possible mystery card. But overall, Nathaniel's hand is quite bad after such a good start.
Yeah, it is, and Damien has a little bit of time as well.
Yep. So here is the One Ring, and it resolved. You always think like, wow, Nathaniel's so far ahead. Damien's not doing a lot, but if there's one deck that can just come back out of nowhere, it's definitely Amulet.
Yeah, and this is starting to look like a situation that might be spiraling out of control for Nathaniel, where this one ring is going to start to draw some cards. Damien did find that bounce land that enabled, some of his more heavier mana draws, and this could be the start of things shifting.
Yeah. So that was in response to the Aether Vial decides to draw off the One Ring, and that is, I suppose, to play around Tidebinder. Now there was an Otawara there from Nathaniel, so had the option to send that back to hand in response, and then of course Damien would not be able to draw a card. Is that something you would be tempted at all to play, or are you trying to like combo that with a Force of Negation to deal with it permanently?
Yeah, I think I would maybe want to combo that with a Force of Negation, or another option is pick bouncing that amulet back up, like in
Hmm.
response to some sort of a play. Could be like a huge lethal swing as well.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So the One Ring causes Damien to lose one life here. And then, yeah, just a nice little hand there. Has a lot going on. Draws a couple cards, engineered explosives, and a bounce land. So now we have plenty of lands, and presuming we have pretty much everything else wrapped up to go, we'll see if there is something like an Arboreal Grazer plus a couple bounce lands or one bounce land, or if we're still going to be one mana short of casting Primeval Titan.
Yeah, gonna need some other element to generate one extra mana. Right now, looking at 5 if with another bounce land.
And of course, we saw Summoner's Pact there, BBD. I mean, this is how you get in trouble and just like lose the game on the spot if you get a little too aggressive with that, right? I wouldn't be
Yeah,
casting that one, would you?
no, I would be cautious about that one. Like you don't want to play a Summoner's Pact where you're now relying on a creature to resolve
Yeah.
that might get hit by a subtlety, or you're relying on just 2 green sources where they can get turned into islands. So it's not. That's kind of a situation where you're playing that on the turn that you're winning the game or going off big.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. We got EE for 2. Comes down, and we'll see. We're going to Damien's end step. And it looks like we might just be okay. So there's the Otawara, and we'll see if you want to Aether Vial in subtlety or anything like that, or just kind of wait. And looks like Damien had to discard to hand size there. Cultivator Colossus heading to the bin. just a Spire Bluff Canal off the top for Nathaniel. And wow, has he been drawing like trash?
Yeah. Yeah, he had such a great start, and then it just all these like reactive elements that have been drawn, or like multiple additional copies of Aether Vial, extra lands, and so forth. It's kind of fallen apart.
Now you're an Aether Vial enjoyer, right? I believe Pro Tour London, when the London Mulligan rule just began, instead of all this hype around Tron, Dredge. Dredge is what we were testing with in our Pro Tour testing team back in the day. What did you play for that one?
Oh, I played humans. I am an Aether Vial enjoyer. I love that card.
Yeah, you made that deck look good. You kind of dominated that tournament.
Tell you what I don't love about the card though is the second and third copy.
Yes, yes. Did you draw a lot of second and third copies late in that tournament, or were you drawing just one for turn one and stopping it there?
Oh, I was drawing all gas all day.
All right, here's another Gruul Turf coming in. Bouncing a land after you get the One Ring going, gaining protection for the next turn. And yeah, there is Summoner's Pact. There's an Arboreal Grazer, Prime Time, 3 lands, a second Primeval Titan. Man, Damien's hand is all gas here for sure.
Yeah, I didn't love the decision to bounce the One Ring, giving a chance to replay it, reset it, and so forth.
Yeah.
It seemed like it might have been more harm than it was worth, but
yeah, I think I would have to agree with you. As it stands, oh, okay. Here is Summoner's Pact. Now there is still that subtlety here. Is there any world where Damien kind of gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar here, trying to be a little too aggressive? Like, Blood Moon, anything like that, where Damien can just lose on the spot at the beginning of the next turn?
it depends on how Damien ends up playing this. Putting in another green source and keeping them all in play, I think mostly plays around the threat here.
Oh man, BBD. Okay, so I guess you have to deal with Dryad first and foremost. But if Nathaniel is able to deal with Dryad and cast like a Tishana's Tidebinder, the Tidebinder is lethal here, right?
Oh yeah, like that. The
Oh.
dismember was step number one. So now, now Nathaniel has a shot in this game where it was looking kind of grim.
Okay, Flame of Anor. I mean, that's still got to be one of the best draws. Flame of Anor is 2 more looks at Tishana's Tidebinder here.
Oh yeah.
Or Tide Shaper, excuse me. Okay, those are not it, but still an excellent draw. Okay, yep, take 0. Okay, and now past the turn. So here's Summoner's Pact to prevent, to not lose the game on the spot. Damien falls to 16.
Managed to survive the sweat of the Summoner's Pact. And now with that, especially with that engineered explosives, I would say it's pretty firmly in the driver's seat.
Still was risky, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. No risk, no reward though.
All right, I guess I'm here for it. But yeah, wow, that game could have went south here. But getting Dryad onto the battlefield and starting to ramp out your game plan is still pretty nice here. Now, can we do anything busted this turn? I suppose not without the amulet.
Yeah, having to pay for the pact, no amulet anymore. It's hard to muster something super powerful on that specific turn.
Okay, so here is another very sad attack here for 4, which I assume Arboreal Grazer was going to block 1. Kind of looks like it didn't though, BBD.
Yeah, and honestly, the One Ring is starting to add up, and these subtleties are going to be insurance against Primeval Titan for the next 2 turns.
Mm-hmm.
This is starting to get to the point where Nathaniel maybe actually does have a nice window to come back into this game.
Yeah, why no blocks from Grazer though? Was that just maybe a misplay? That didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe he was afraid of getting pumped by a Lord creature type, but with the engineered explosives, I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, that's fair. And all right, so here is subtlety. And I saw a little peek at Nathaniel's top deck. It was subtlety number 2. So this is 1 time walk. The next subtlety is another time walk. I think Damien at this point kind of needs another One Ring to not only shut this ring off from losing 2 to 3 damage, but to just protect himself from an attack.
Yeah, I agree with that. One nice thing about the One Ring is that it does draw you a lot of cards. Is very good at finding another One Ring.
That's true. That's true. What a powerful Magic card. Just incredible.
All right, opts to even okay,
Off
draws the
first,
cards
huh?
before putting the Titan back on top to see.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. I like that play.
So probably ideally trying to find an amulet. So there's an amulet for the next prime time, but all right, the shields are down now relatively. I guess we do have the Gruul Turf and then the ability to sacrifice EE. That's going to help a lot. Because
Yeah,
with
that's
this
gonna
Lord coming down, it could just be lethal.
yeah, that's gonna help a lot. And with something like even like another Arboreal Grazer here, suddenly you have access to 3 mana, and there it is.
Wait, with the other subtlety here, and you shut that down, is there any way that this is just enough? There's subtlety plus Lord of Atlantis. That Grazer is on top, and then Lord comes into play plus Mutavault with 1 blocker.
You know, it looks like that might be enough damage, and you have to account for the 3 damage from the One Ring as well.
Oh, with the 3 damage from the One Ring, you see Nathaniel going pretty fast. You gotta think that the math has been done, and Damien might be really kicking himself here by not just leaving that EE available, because without that, right, you just have EE for 2, you put Grazer in front of subtlety, and that is it. Wow, Nathaniel takes this down with what has to be one of the sweeter decks in the field with Is It Merfolk here. BBD, that was nice.
Yeah, I mean that was awesome. Like that was a great comeback, really well played. Like squeaking out as much damage as you can get, making sure that that damage from the One Ring like really kind of added up at the end there, and using those subtleties as the kind of tempo time walkie type cards that were able to finish the job.
Yeah, I mean that was nice. All 3 of those games were really swingy. There were times when I just didn't think there was a chance Amulet was going to win, then vice versa. But Nathaniel was able to pick it up, and I very much want to see what he has to say with Tan and Grace. We got an interview on the other side of this break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here for round number 5 here at the Regional Championship here in Denver. Don't go anywhere.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the interview area presented by Heavy Play. I'm Tan. I'm joined by Nate Perigo. Now, we saw you win a match with Merfolk, probably one of the most favored decks of Twitch chat. They love seeing Merfolk do well. And this isn't your first time with the deck either, right?
Correct. I've played this for a while, and I qualified for one of these RCs with almost this exact deck.
Now, what made you play this deck today? You were talking about the fact that you think it's pretty well positioned.
Yeah. So the worst matchup we have is the second most popular deck, which is Yawgmoth. But the best matchup in the world, we almost can't lose, is Rhinos, and that deck is made up 21% of the meta today. It's why I brought the deck, and I feel like it's favored against several of the other decks, but particularly Rhinos.
Now, you're talking about something that kind of helps out, especially in the Rhinos matchup. It helps out Amulet and can help out a little bit in that Yawg matchup that you talked about how bad it is. This is Flame of Venor. This is probably one of the main reasons you're playing red in the deck, and man, does it look good in your deck.
Yeah, it overperforms, particularly in that Amulet match. If you saw it, it did everything I needed it to. It's the only reason I was able to at all compete. But yeah, splashing red in the deck is not too difficult. We used to run Blood Moons in the sideboard while we were doing this, and I didn't think it's necessary anymore. Flame of Venor is how you shore up, like you said, all the bad matchups, in my opinion.
Well, thanks for the time. Keep representing the Merfolk players at home. I know they really want to see you do well, and best of luck the rest of the weekend.
Thank you very much.